it sort of literally translates to grace. That these performances are meant to put you, the audience, you are supposed to see something that elicits a sense of grace and appreciation in you, and that the beauty of it lies in something that is very simple, subtle, and restrained in its suggestion. So it is not Transformers in any way, shape, or form. It is kind of about as opposite of Transformers as you can possibly get. And this is the goal of what a no theater experience is supposed to do. I'll lay that map out for you just a little more in a moment here. But as I said here, it's always elegant and always kind of aware of the fragile nature of which human life kind of has its interactions with nature. Okay? There's a delicacy, and as you saw in, say, Takube's reaction to being wrong, when there's this sort of aversion that triggers an extreme emotional response, this is very much tied into this sort of feeling that there's a danger, that there's a threat to the self from having an extreme emotional response. And that's in some respects what the Yugen is trying to achieve in attaining that path of middle restraint in your emotional placement. You know? Most of the time, Westerners, when we go to the theater, we like to see the extreme emotional reaction because it's showing and demonstrating something that is, well, as somebody very famous once told me personally, oh, something very naughty, something that you can't see at home. You know, we like to see people behaving in ways that isn't normal for us because it's entertaining, and we get to appreciate ourselves because they're behaving badly. Okay? Not so here. This is meant to show you the painful outcome of extreme interactions and how you can balance that in ways that are make your life a very sort of pleasant, stable, middle emotional response. So it, as I say here, captures a reflection of a mood rather than an emphasis on storytelling. So I'm going to just show you about a 2-minute clip here of a no performance to give you just a sense of, you may notice some similarities to Kabuki, but there's also some very stark differences as well. And keep in mind, we're talking about several hundred years before Kabuki became a thing.
Consists of a chorus of chanters, which carries the melody, and 4 instruments, which provide the rhythmic accompaniment.
Notice the stage. We've got the bridge that comes off here, as well as the 4 posts with pillars.
In this scene, an elderly woman living deep in the mountains is complaining of her long, lonely life. No is sometimes referred to as the art of walking. This unusual theatrical convention is a minimalist expression of the energy the actor keeps hidden behind the mask. The thick costume creates a strong linear profile, de-emphasizing the physical presence of the actor. traveling through the mountains who have been given permission to spend the night at the woman's house. Many people wonder why.
So, you get the idea of how much this is really sort of like about a meditation on a condition. This woman is making her life more miserable by dwelling on the painfulness of the loneliness. Is making her life more painful by continually reminding herself how awful it is. And the lesson to be learned from that is you are much better off if you just go about your living and stop trying to kind of assess it from the outside in a way that's going to do more emotional damage to yourself. So that's kind of the purpose and characteristics of how this is meant to, teach a Buddhist sort of mentality that allows you to live in a way that doesn't have the emotional extremes. So, as you can see, there's a highly rigid, stylized representation of movement, from the walk to the very specific and deliberate way that her hand gestures were sort of being demonstrated. Kabuki has this as well, but again, this is kind of where it starts. So that the script serves as a framework for the choreography of this movement. Now, what we saw here was a particularly settled moment. There are times where that becomes a little bit more clamorous, okay? But this is really sort of at the heart of how this performance is presented. And again, the lines are sung or intoned. Now, I've seen a couple of no performances. Most no plays run somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes. And they are usually packaged together. I'll explain more about that in a few slides here, but they're usually packaged together. And as an audience member, you shouldn't go in expecting to be quote unquote entertained. I was intrigued certainly, but it is difficult for, I think, most Western audiences to really appreciate the artistry, the full artistry, because of its differences. Okay? And again, it is meant to be meditated. So you have to kind of go into it with that knowledge and expectation. So, in a typical no performance, it contained 5 shows. One of them was a play praising the gods. One of them was a warrior's play about women. We just saw one of those, that clip. A miscellaneous play, often about madness or the verge of losing it, and a demon play. So these plays tended to have something of a little bit more supernatural, mystic, kind of metaphysical bent to them. These 3 tended to be more grounded in real life in some way, shape, or form. Okay? But so we're looking at probably about 3.5 to 4 hours of presentation. Now, even a couple of 100 years after this sort of became the instigated norm for no theater performances, that started to be a little bit too much for most audiences. These are the roles that would be masked in those plays. Again, the Shite, male, female, old person. Again, we just saw old person, gods and monsters. The Shite, which we would probably call the protagonist or the main character, the ones who are married, carrying them, wearing the mask, always came from one of these 5 categories. Now, as time went on, and no performances started to dwindle in their popularity, there was an adjustment in the sort of rigidity of how they were presented. They still were based on these roles, as well as the demon plays, warrior plays, women plays, etc. But it was shortened to include a Kyogen. Kyogen is a farcical interlude. So if you go all the way back to the Sengaku, when we're talking about, and the Sarigaku, I should say, talking about the monkey music, where it's something a little bit more frolicsome happens, part